Sam Altman says era of remote work is over. Autonomous working has proven to be a game changer for myself and others in my team. I can log in and out when I need to. Meeting stand-ups I obviously need to factor in, which allows me to take an actual break and go somewhere with my dog when I am feeling bogged down, unproductive. The ability to do this means that, when I return to the desk, I am refreshed and ready to tackle a problem with fresh eyes, instead of glazed over and looking at a clock, anxiously waiting for my time to jump on a train and commute to my home. This rhetoric that remote work is bad for business seems to always come from people whom I suspect have an ulterior motive, usually people with investments in real estate and retail businesses, which are taking a hit from the lack of lunchtime and rush hour footfall. My manager once said to me, "I hired an adult so I don't need to hold your hand." And this has resonated with me since. If you cannot trust your staff to do what is best for you, then that is your problem for hiring the wrong people. It isn't the problem of an entire industry.
The point of the article is that for teamwork with unclarity, you are more creative by working in a physical space together. If your work can be done in isolation and doesn't require a team to deal with any uncertainty, then by all means work fully remote. However, if your work is about innovation and collaboration, then it's going to be more effective to spend time together. I think it's telling that you talk about looking at a clock. If that's how you spend your office time, then indeed there might be something off. E.g., a controlling manager who wants their minions to be visible and on the clock. Personally, I work 1 or 2 days from home. Some team members more, a few even fully remote. But it's noticeable that they are more task-oriented and less included in any new concepts, roadmaps, designs, etc. The majority of the people spend the same 1 or 2 days together in the office, where all kinds of formal and informal interactions happen that further the collaborative creative process.
The point of the article is that for teamwork with unclarity, you are more creative by working in a physical space together. That used to be my feeling as well. As much as I don't like Zuck in general, we hold our meetings in VR, and for us there is no measurable difference from being in the office for creative work. While we really struggled on Zoom. After I tried a Quest 2, I decided to just get 15 of them for the team and it just works. Your brain, well, our brains, guess there are exceptions, forgets you are not actually sitting in a room with your colleagues, to the point where you actually try to physically touch them when working. It works very, very well. Never setting foot in the office ever again. Don't really mind if Sam Altman thinks differently.
Or just have optional office hours, Slack huddles and mob sessions every few days. Some of my engineers have an open huddle for a few hours a day, where anyone can drop into their project while they work. Others make use of our scheduled themed mob sessions, i.e. maintenance Mondays, deployment Thursdays. Have a problem, idea, or just want to hang out, then come by. ICs and seniors are required to host at least a weekly office hour to assist juniors or teach something of their choice. The default doesn't always have to be returned to office for a physical meet. There's lots of other options.
ICs and seniors are required to host at least a weekly office hour to assist juniors or teach something of their choice. When I was a junior engineer working in person, I was learning from senior engineers multiple times a day, not just once a week.
There are remote-first companies that have 24/7 channels for anyone to ask questions and discuss things with seniors. There are office-first companies with poor training culture. Commitment to training is the deciding factor.
However, if your work is about innovation and collaboration, please, I've worked on plenty of successful new projects with a distributed team. This is in-person bias is largely for people who don't know how to communicate effectively.
I assume he's got either direct or indirect links to commercial real estate, as an owner or investor, or something else. It makes literally zero business sense to be forking out anywhere from a few hundred to a few thousand per employee per month to give them a space to work, when that can just be avoided. The amount of cost and overheads involved, from insurance to upkeep to rent to O's, a workspace is probably the next biggest expense for a company after salaries. One that can be pruned with very little pushback. And unlike an employee, that's an expense that's usually on much, much longer terms, decades in a lot of instances. No alleged productivity gains are worth the time cost, other than managers wanting to see the kingdom they rule over, or they sit to gain from paying that money somehow.
Why do you assume this? Sam literally takes no salary or compensation of any kind from OpenAI because he thinks he has enough money. Your bias is clouding your judgment.
I agree. But shouldn't we expect to see some 100% remote businesses eat the lunch of the old dinosaurs in their high-rises? I would think that would be the best proof.
Linux is doing rather well. Not a business, but the people building it have eaten Microsoft's server market pretty well. That's what happens when you let engineers do their jobs.
I don't get that stance of creative work needing to happen in person. Seems like a CEO having a bias for a specific type of work style. Open source development has been running on remote work forever, and it's doing great. The recent article about OpenAI and Google having their lunch eaten by a bunch of remote hobbyists show how this thinking is flawed.
I read it as this guy failed to build a distributed team that would meet his expectations, and now extrapolates it to the entire industry. I have heard similar conclusions from a founder who invested a lot of money in a big fancy office in a great location, only to discover that half of the team prefers full remote. The team was ready to work this way, the founder was not.
Remote work threatens the foundation of the commercial real estate market. Expect a huge push to get people back into the office, especially if there is softness in the job market.
Be that as it may, why would corporations that are tenants rather than landlords make decisions on that basis? Remote work saves companies a lot of money on office space.
The C-suite of the company I worked for during lockdown fretted a lot about the lack of usage of the office space. The problem they had was that they had a long-term lease on the building. They couldn't get out of it, and it burned a lot of money. They had a political problem with investors. Why are you wasting all this money of office space that nobody is going to? And getting people back into the office was the easiest way to take that heat off of them. They did eventually force everyone back in the office, but I had moved on shortly before that happened.
That is why nature invented subletting. Getting 80% of what you're paying for space you don't need is much better than getting 0%. Then you get to claim a big cost reduction this year and a big cost reduction when the lease expires, and you can dump the unneeded space entirely.
They investigated this, but it was impossible to find anyone who wanted the space. Everyone was working at home. Nobody needed office space.
Well, as a counterpoint, it could be a huge win for real estate if given they could convert the office space into apartments for people, which is much needed. I know these buildings aren't set up in regards to plumbing and whatnot, but we can adapt.
When you actually look at the claim Altman can defend from his own experience, it's not that remote work doesn't work for the tech industry. It's that remote work doesn't work for early-stage startups. But most of the tech industry is not early-stage startups. Most of the people working in the tech industry could still be working remotely, while at the same time, the small fraction of them that are working at early-stage startups could be working in person in an office, or hangout space or whatever, and the tech industry would do just fine. Unfortunately, when I look at Altman's track record as a pundit, as opposed to as a startup developer, this kind of schoolboy error is what I usually see.
So two friends living in two different places can never build a product and then business around it together. They must be sitting within 1 meter proximity, or the magic potion doesn't work.
Why don't you show us successful startups where people built it fully remotely without meeting each other in person? Sam is claiming that in early-stage startups, one needs some in-person interaction, which I fully agree with.
Yeah, if you are just pumping out generic Jira ticket work, which doesn't require interaction with anyone else, of course remote works well. If you are actually trying to move fast, throw ideas around and collaborate, nothing beats being in the same room. Video calls are a poor replacement to real-life interactions. Otherwise, the air travel industry would have been crippled by now.
He further added that OpenAI's some of the best talents are working remotely. He said, "Some of our best people are remote, and we will continue to support it always, so please don't let hating SF stop you from applying to OpenAI. I don't like the OpenF fentanyl markets either." The above line seems to contradict the part about worst mistake of the tech industry.
Is this an outdated view the article interposed? Is he only talking about startups given his YC background? Article isn't that clear.
Hypocrisy from the guy who is both publicly an AI doomer with a stocked AI apocalypse retreat and an AI firm CEO, promoting his product as either near or actually being Aggie. Who would expect that?
Yeah, that was particularly gross and unbecoming.
I think being open and honest about the problems the electorate and elected leaders have caused is the first step in the direction of fixing them.
Nah, I'm good. I have been much more productive at home than I've ever been in the office. Happier too. I'm saving 2 hours of travel time per day that I now get to spend on my hobbies. Not going back.
Altman also spoke about the future of AI. According to Altman, AI needs to be treated with extreme seriousness, as the tech might have existential risk attached to it. I really wish that OpenAI would start behaving as if they believed this.
Cool. Can I have a private office with a door? Because I have one at home, and I don't see myself giving that up.
I have noticed that senior employees, rather selfishly, advocate for full remote work. This robs junior people of valuable one-on-one mentorship and makes it extremely difficult to gain domain expertise and break into niche fields.
Does he happen to have substantial investments in real estate portfolios or something?
Are there any counterexamples of remote-first new companies that built something exceptional, while always being remote?
I could not disagree more. At least for the last decade in the places I've worked, major tech companies, everyone has been doing remote work, anyway, even though they were in the office. I mean, meetings were held online, discussion took place through chat, etc., between people literally sitting in cubes next to each other. Everything is just more efficient and less disruptive that way. Working from home changed no work processes at all, at least where I worked, introduced no additional social separation, and yielded large benefits for individuals, teams, and the company. You clearly didn't read the article and came to react from the headline. He says the earlier the stage, and the more unclear, the more you need to spend time together. His general comment is about full 100% transition from in-office to remote. I agree with this. You need some time in person, especially with an early-stage startup.
The best and most productive I've ever been, at least felt. But I think the results spoke for themselves as well was when I was able to go into an office, but did not have to. There is some tragedy of the commons there though. It was quite convenient to have most everyone in the office on a given day. If I decided at 11 a.m. it might be nice to switch gears. I also lived literally across the street for one job, and about an average 18-minute door-to-door commute on public transit for the other. Many others on the teams were in similar living situations, so it was easy to call impromptu office days the day before, or whatnot as needed. I've otherwise worked from home most of my career, but would travel into an office about once a month to see faces and have meetings. Or just go out and have dinners with folks after work. This worked pretty well. Full remote is tough for me now. I would prefer to be in an office 2-3 days a week, but not forced to be. I do miss the energy of a well-functioning team executing together in close proximity. And to be fair, the worst job I ever had was a 50-90 minute each direction car commute from hell. Literally anything is better than that.
Flagged.
Nobody should get bullied, no matter who they are. Being kind and understanding is the way to go, my friend. Reply.